My name is Celestine Ashford, and I'm 19 years old. If you looked at my life on paper the week everything fell apart, you might have thought I was just another quiet girl from suburban Colorado trying to make sense of adulthood, someone with a decent GPA, a beat-up Honda Civic, and a dad who loved her more than anything. But papers don't tell you what it feels like to lose your whole world twice. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Stories people call dramatic until they find themselves living through one. My mother died when I was 10. It was the kind of death that leaves a house permanently quieter, the kind that turns birthdays into polite dinners instead of celebrations. Dad did everything he could after that. He made chocolate chip pancakes every Sunday morning, even when he burned the first batch every time. He packed snacks in my backpack with sticky notes that said, "I'm proud of you, Cece." He hugged me too long at drop-offs, and sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he cried alone in the garage with the smell of motor oil clinging to his clothes. He was heartbroken, but he was still my dad, the safest place I had left. Then Linda entered our lives. I was 14 when she stepped onto our porch with red lipstick, a too-tight smile, and a voice that dripped with sugary warmth whenever Dad was in the room. But whenever her eyes flicked toward me, that warmth vanished like someone had snapped their fingers and shut off the lights. Dad thought she was wonderful, and to be fair, she played the part beautifully. She cooked fancy dinners, laughed at all his stories, and touched his arm like he was the center of her world. But I saw the strings attached to every gesture, and somehow I never qualified for any of that kindness. Still, I tried. Dad deserved happiness after losing Mom. He deserved someone who made him smile. But 5 years later, without warning, Dad collapsed from a massive heart attack. No second chances, no final conversations, no goodbye. I was 19, still figuring out how to schedule my own dentist appointments, when I suddenly had to plan a funeral. My birthday had been just a week earlier, but instead of celebrating, I stood beside my dad's casket, trying to understand how the universe could be so cruel twice. And Linda? Linda didn't even wait for the funeral to end. The moment we came home from the service, she walked through the house like she owned it, replacing family photos with her own, tossing Dad's Sports Illustrated magazines into the trash, and humming off key as if grief was some distant concept she'd heard about in a documentary once. The breaking point came 2 days later. I was standing at the living room window when I saw her crouched at the mailbox, scrubbing at something with steel wool. I stepped outside just in time to see the last flakes of paint curl away as she wiped Dad's name off the metal. When she noticed me, she didn't even flinch. "Celestine," she said, her voice sharp as cracked glass. "You're not really family anymore, are you? It's time for you to find your own place." I should have screamed. I should have told her she had no right. I should have done anything except what I did, which was stand there, numb and shaking, while she erased the last physical trace of my father's name. But what was the point arguing with a woman who had been waiting years for this moment? So I packed 2 duffel bags, a few pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my worn Converse sneakers, toiletries, and my acoustic guitar, the one Dad saved for months to buy me for my 16th birthday. I walked past the coat closet and saw his old Rockies jacket still hanging there. I reached out, fingers trembling, then pulled my hand away. I couldn't take it, not yet. That night, I crashed on my best friend Sarah's couch in her small downtown apartment. She shoved a fuzzy blanket into my arms and pushed a bottle of water toward me on the coffee table. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. Honestly, no questions. We didn't talk about it. We didn't have to. Sarah had been there through every storm of my life. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, trying to breathe through the concrete block of grief pressing against my ribs. Every inhale felt like I was dragging air through a cracked chest. Eventually, when the apartment settled into quiet, I reached for my phone with shaking hands and called Aunt Rebecca, Dad's older sister. She answered on the second ring. "Cece?" Her voice was soft but alert. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" I poured everything out. Half sentences, tears, fear, all tangled up until I barely knew what I was saying. The kind of crying that leaves your throat raw and your eyes burning. When I finally stopped, she didn't rush to speak. There was a long, heavy silence, the kind that tells you someone is truly listening. Then she said the 9 words that changed everything. "I'll handle this. Go back to the house tomorrow." "Why? What's happening?" I whispered. "I'll meet you there in the morning," she said. "Just trust me." Her tone was steady, almost determined. It wasn't the voice of someone shocked. It was the voice of someone who knew something I didn't. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I drove my old Civic back to the house where I'd grown up. The front porch still sagged on the left side. The birdhouse Dad and I built still hung crooked from the maple tree, the paint chipped from years of weather. But when I pulled up, everything felt wrong. 5 black Cadillac Escalades lined the curb like we were filming an FBI raid. 2 men in dark suits stood at the front door, one checking his watch, the other staring so still I had to look twice to make sure he wasn't a mannequin. My heart pounded so hard my vision swam. Had Linda hired security to keep me out? I swallowed, squared my shoulders, and rang the doorbell like I was visiting a stranger's house. The door flew open. Linda stood there, pale, trembling, and so visibly rattled she looked like she might collapse. "Oh, Celestine," she stammered, voice suddenly sticky and sweet. "I was just about to call you, honey." "Honey," I almost laughed. "What's going on?" I asked. "I'm just here to get the rest of my stuff." Before Linda could answer, Aunt Rebecca stepped into view behind her. Power heels, charcoal suit, a thick manila folder in her hand, and a smile sharp enough to cut diamonds. "Perfect timing," she said. "Come on in. My legal team is already set up in the living room." Legal team, Escalades, security. My heartbeat thudded in my throat. Something massive was happening, and I was the only one who didn't know what it was. The moment I stepped inside my childhood home, the air felt wrong, pressurized, charged, like the atmosphere right before a thunderstorm. The living room was full of suits, laptops, legal pads, and the unmistakable scent of expensive perfume from Aunt Rebecca. It didn't feel like the place where I used to build Lego castles on the floor, or where Dad would fall asleep halfway through a movie with a bowl of popcorn balanced on his chest. It felt like a courtroom. 2 lawyers sat at the dining table, one older with calm, patient eyes, the other younger, flipping through documents so fast the pages whispered like wings. Both of them stood up when Aunt Rebecca entered, which told me everything I needed to know about who was in control here. And it wasn't Linda. Linda hovered near the staircase, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked like she'd either scream or faint, or both. "What is this?" I whispered, leaning close to Aunt Rebecca. She gave me a small, reassuring pat on the shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetheart. You'll understand in a minute." Linda erupted before I could ask more. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she snapped, pacing in short, frantic lines. "You can't just barge into my house with lawyers and—" Aunt Rebecca raised one hand, her voice calm but sharp enough to slice through Linda's panic. "Sit down." The command cracked through the room like a gavel. Linda froze. Then, slowly, she sat. Not because she wanted to obey, but because she suddenly realized she wasn't the one holding power here. I stayed near the doorway, heart pounding, trying to understand how this had gone from me picking up my clothes to a full-blown legal intervention. The older lawyer cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "Ms. Ashford," he said gently, "your aunt asked us to review the documents your father finalized prior to his passing." Linda barked a humorless laugh. "Oh, please. Michael didn't finalize anything. We were discussing updating the deed, but he—" "You were not on the deed," the lawyer interrupted evenly. Linda's face drained of color. I lived here. I was his wife." The younger lawyer slid a thick folder across the table toward her. "This is a certified copy of the trust documentation. Michael Ashford placed this home and all associated property into a trust in the name of his daughter, Celestine Ashford, the sole beneficiary." My breath caught. "What?" I whispered. I looked at Aunt Rebecca, who nodded, eyes softening. "Your father set up the trust right after your 18th birthday," she said quietly. "He intended to tell you, but he never got the chance." Linda shot to her feet. "That's impossible. Michael would never do something like that without telling me." "He didn't tell you," the older lawyer replied, "for reasons we believe were very intentional." Linda's lips trembled. "You're lying. You're all lying." A man in a dark suit, one of the ones from outside, stepped forward just enough for her to notice. He didn't say a word, but Linda sat back down. The younger lawyer's tone remained steady. "Under the terms of the trust, you were allowed to reside in this property only temporarily as the surviving spouse. However, since the beneficiary has now requested your removal—" "I did not," I blurted, panicked. Aunt Rebecca touched my arm. "Requesting her removal means you returned for your belongings and confirmed you no longer consent to her occupying the home. That's all." "Oh," I said softly. Linda seemed to realize she had one last chance. She switched tactics instantly, her voice trembling, eyes wet. "Celestine, honey, your father would want us to stay together. We're family." The word tasted poisonous. "Linda," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "you kicked me out 2 days after his funeral. She flinched like I'd slapped her. The younger lawyer spoke before she could recover. You have exactly 1 hour to collect your personal clothing and toiletries. Anything else left behind will be considered abandoned property. 1 hour? Linda screeched. That's absurd. You expect me to pack up my life in an hour? This isn't your life, Aunt Rebecca said calmly. It was never yours. Linda's chest rose and fell, rapid and uneven, like she was trying not to hyperventilate. The lawyer continued, Security will escort you if necessary, but we hope it won't come to that. Linda stared at all of us, rage, panic, and humiliation battling behind her eyes. For a moment, I thought she'd throw something, maybe overturn a chair. Instead, she grabbed her phone and stormed upstairs. Aunt Rebecca let out a long breath. Clock's ticking, she called after her. Silence settled over the house again. My hands were still cold as ice. Aunt Rebecca, what's happening? Why did Dad put everything in my name? She sighed, her eyes heavy with something that wasn't quite grief and wasn't quite anger. Because he knew Celestine. He knew Linda wasn't what she pretended to be. I swallowed hard. Did he say something? Not directly, she said, but he made it very clear, privately, that he didn't trust her with long-term decisions. He trusted you. The living room suddenly felt too bright, too full of strangers, too heavy with revelations I hadn't been ready for. I stepped toward the hallway for a moment, needing air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Noah, my boyfriend of almost a year. The kind of guy who brought me snacks during study nights and asked about my day even when he was exhausted from work. I answered quietly, turning away from the room. Hey, he whispered. I heard from Sarah. Are you okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. Do you want me to come over? No, not yet, but thank you for calling. His voice softened. I'm here, Celestine. Whatever you need. The call lasted only a moment, but somehow it grounded me. Back in the living room, the lawyers gathered their materials while Aunt Rebecca reviewed paperwork like she'd been preparing for this moment for years. Where did all of this come from? I asked softly. Her gaze flicked upward to the second floor where Linda was stomping around furiously. When she threw you out, Rebecca said, I remembered something your father told me once. Something he asked me to do if anything ever happened to him. What was it? We'll talk later, she said gently. Today we focus on getting your home back. 53 minutes later, Linda came down the stairs dragging 2 overstuffed suitcases. Her face was red and blotchy, mascara smudged, and her breathing uneven. But her eyes, cold, gleaming, furious, were dry. She paused at the door, her hand tightening on the handle. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, or maybe spit out one final insult to make herself feel powerful. But she said nothing. She simply shook her head, jaw clenched, and walked out into the bright Colorado sunlight like a ghost dissolving in daylight. One of the black Escalades rolled slowly behind her until she turned the corner and disappeared entirely. Aunt Rebecca exhaled softly. Well, she murmured, that's that. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the empty street. Then I turned and stepped into the kitchen, the heart of every memory I had with Dad. Aunt Rebecca followed, moving quietly as she opened cabinets and pulled out 2 glasses. She filled them with iced tea and handed one to me. We sat at the table where I used to do my homework, while Dad stirred chili or tried to replicate Mom's enchiladas. Are you okay, sweetheart? She asked. I wanted to say yes, but instead the truth came out in a whisper. I don't know. She nodded. That's all right. The house hummed softly around us. The refrigerator buzzed. The floorboards creaked like old friends shifting in their sleep. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt the faintest flicker of hope. For the first time in days, the house didn't feel hostile. It didn't feel like I was trespassing in a place I'd grown up in. The silence was still heavy with grief, but it was my father's silence, not Linda's resentment. Aunt Rebecca set her iced tea down and glanced toward the doorway where Linda had just vanished minutes earlier. She won't be back, she said simply. Part of me expected to feel victorious, to feel something triumphant, something fiery, something loud. Instead, all I felt was tired, heavy tired, the kind that sinks into your bones. Aunt Rebecca stood, brushing invisible dust from her charcoal suit. Come on, sweetheart, let's reclaim this house properly. I followed her into the hallway, each step a strange mix of familiar and foreign. Dad's framed baseball posters still hung slightly crooked. The carpet runner still had that little wrinkle near the corner from when he tried to fix it with double-sided tape. But the air felt different, clearing, like someone had opened windows I didn't know were shut. Aunt Rebecca paused at the kitchen counter and tapped the wooden recipe box sitting beneath the coffee maker. I was hoping this was still here, she murmured. I blinked. Mom's recipes? She nodded. Your dad kept these safe. Wouldn't even let Linda touch them. Something in my chest loosened just a little. She lifted the lid, flipping through yellowed index cards full of faded handwriting. Loopy, warm, undeniably Mom's. Your mother's apple cinnamon bread, Rebecca said softly, pulling one card out. I haven't tasted this in years. I remembered that smell. Sweet, warm, the scent that used to fill our house on snow days. I also remembered the day Mom taught me how to stir without spilling flour everywhere, her hands guiding mine, steady and patient. The memory hit me like a soft punch to the ribs. I don't know if I can make it taste like hers, I whispered. Aunt Rebecca smiled. I don't care how it tastes. I just want you to feel her here again. So we gathered ingredients. Flour, sugar, cinnamon, butter. Rebecca found mixing bowls in the lower cabinet, the ones Mom used to call her battle tools. I tied on her old apron, faded with time but still smelling faintly of vanilla and laundry soap. As I mixed the batter, Aunt Rebecca measured ingredients with the precision of someone handling fragile glass. Why didn't Dad tell me about the trust? I finally asked. The question had sat in my throat like a stone since that morning. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she leaned on the counter, watching the cinnamon swirl into the batter. Your father wasn't naive, she said at last. He knew Linda, knew how she operated. She could charm a room full of strangers in under 5 minutes, but she couldn't hide her resentment toward you. My chest tightened. She always hated me. She envied you, Rebecca corrected. Your father loved you fiercely, and she couldn't stand not being the center of his world. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it, so her solution was to kick me out. Her expression softened. Your dad suspected something like this might happen. That's why he put everything in your name. He thought he'd have time to explain it to you. I swallowed, blinking back sudden heat in my eyes. I should have known. I should have seen something. No, sweetheart. Rebecca stepped closer and cupped my cheek. You were grieving, and Linda was very good at pretending. The oven beeped, pulling us both from the moment. We slid the bread inside and washed our hands, hers steady, mine trembling. As we waited on the back porch, the scent of cinnamon began filling the house, slow and comforting. The porch had always been Dad's favorite place. He'd sit out there on summer nights with a beer, humming old folk songs, letting me braid his hair horribly as he tried not to laugh. I sat on the porch steps now, hugging my knees. Linda tried to get added to the deed once, Aunt Rebecca said suddenly. I craned my head toward her. She did? Oh, yes, she said, eyes narrowing slightly. About a year before your father passed. He called me right after, angry, shaken. He refused to sign anything. Something dark rolled through my stomach. What did she say when he refused? She cried, claimed she felt insecure without her name on the house. But your father knew what she really wanted. Security, asset control, power. My throat tightened. Aunt Rebecca sighed. I should have stepped in the moment she threw you out, but I froze. I was grieving too. I placed my hand over hers on the step. You didn't freeze. You saved me today. She squeezed my fingers. You saved yourself, Celestine. I just made sure you had the support you deserved. The kitchen timer chimed from inside, and the two of us hurried back in. The smell hit me first. Warm, sweet, a scent that wrapped around my chest like a hug I hadn't felt in years. We pulled the loaf out, steam curling into the room, and for a moment neither of us spoke. It's not perfect, I whispered. She shook her head. It doesn't need to be. We sliced the bread and sat at the table, our breathing synced with the quiet rhythm of the house. The sunlight filtered through the window exactly the way it used to when Mom stood there drying dishes. For a heartbeat, I swear I felt them both in the room. Mom's soft laugh. Dad's warm presence. It didn't hurt as sharply as before. It hurt in a way that made me feel less alone. Afterward, I walked down the hallway, barefoot, letting the floorboards creak under me. The house felt alive again. I opened my bedroom door. Everything was dusty, familiar, untouched. A plastic box filled with childhood drawings sat in the corner. My old guitar leaned against the wall, strings loose but intact. I picked it up, strummed once. The sound wavered, fragile, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. Then I made my way toward Dad's room. Just his room now. When I opened the door, the scent hit me. Coffee, cedar, the faint trace of his cologne. His flannel shirts hung untouched. The denim jacket he wore every autumn hung on the hook. I reached for it, then froze. Something inside the pocket was sticking out just slightly, something I had never noticed before. A sealed envelope. My breath caught. It had my name on it, Celestine, in Dad's messy handwriting. My fingers trembled. Not now, I wasn't ready. I slipped the envelope back into the jacket and closed the closet. One day, soon, Just not today. I turned off the light and closed the door. The hallway felt warmer now, safer, like the house was welcoming me back. That night, after Aunt Rebecca left with a promise to return tomorrow morning, bright and early, sweetheart, we have a house to reclaim properly. The silence inside the house felt different. Not hollow, not hostile, not swollen with all the things Linda had stuffed into its walls. It felt gentle, like the house was exhaling. I locked the front door, turned off the downstairs lights, and stood in the dim glow of the hallway. Only the night lamp near the stairs was on, casting a soft gold tint along the walls. The same lamp Dad used to leave on for me whenever he worked late shifts. I walked slowly upstairs, one hand trailing along the wooden banister. The grooves I'd carved into it when I was 8, tiny hearts and crooked stars, were still there. Linda had always threatened to sand them down, but Dad never let her. "Let her be a kid," he'd say. At the top of the stairs, I paused. Every bedroom door was slightly open, like the house was inviting me in, room by room, memory by memory. I started with my old bedroom. My childhood desk sat against the far wall, the wood scratched from years of homework, art projects, and heartbreaks scribbled in journal pages. The poster holes were still visible on the walls, tiny markers of teenage rebellion, late-night music obsessions, and dreams I'd once taped up for motivation. I stepped inside, fingertips brushing across the books on the shelf. One of Mom's old fairy tale collections caught my eye. Dad used to do the voices when he read them, terrible accents that made me laugh until I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything smelled faintly like dust, lavender candle smoke, and the faint echo of childhood. But I wasn't ready to stay here yet. I walked down the hallway to Dad's room. Just the doorway made something inside me twist. The faint scent of him still lingered. Coffee, cedar, sun-warmed cotton. I stepped in. His reading glasses sat on the nightstand beside a half-finished paperback mystery novel. A grocery list was still pinned on the corkboard above his dresser. Milk, apples, coffee beans, something sweet for Cece. And his closet, full, untouched. I reached for the denim jacket again. This time, I pulled it off the hanger. The weight of it settled onto my arms like a memory wrapped in cloth. That sealed envelope inside the pocket nudged my wrist. Celestine. I froze. Not now, not yet. My heart wasn't steady enough. So I gently slid the letter deeper into the jacket pocket, letting it rest there like a sleeping thought. I hung the jacket back up and closed the closet door with a soft click. Then, needing air, I drifted toward the window. The neighborhood streetlights glowed softly outside. The maple tree swayed, its leaves whispering in the breeze. For the first time in weeks, I felt home. A soft vibration buzzed in my pocket. Noah, are you home safe? A small smile tugged at my lips. I typed back, "Yeah, it's a lot, but I'm okay." His reply was immediate. "Do you want me to come by, even just on the porch?" I hesitated. Part of me craved the warmth of his presence, but the other part needed this night alone, needed to walk through these memories without anyone else watching me break or rebuild. "Maybe tomorrow," I typed. "I need tonight to breathe." "I get it," he wrote back. "I'm proud of you, Cece." I closed my phone, exhaling slowly. The next room I visited was the small office at the end of the hallway. The door creaked as I opened it. Dad had used this room for bills, work emails, and the occasional late-night attempt to organize family photos. Everything was exactly as he left it. Stacks of paperwork neatly piled, pens aligned in a mug, sticky notes with reminders and inside jokes. On the desk sat a framed photo of Mom holding me as a baby. Her smile was soft, gentle, glowing. The same smile I had seen reflected in myself whenever I caught my own reflection unexpectedly. Aunt Rebecca had mentioned something earlier. I found something else in his office, but we'll discuss it later. My eyes scanned the desk. A drawer was slightly ajar. My heartbeat picked up. I pulled it open. Inside was a small black notebook, the leather worn from use. I flipped it open. Dad's handwriting filled the pages. Grocery lists, repair notes, reminders to pay bills, and my name. Over and over. Ask lawyer about trust details for Celestine. Don't forget to update medical info with Celestine listed. Teach Cece how to change a tire before winter. Write letter. Don't delay. My breath stuttered. He planned all of this. He'd been planning for me, protecting me, preparing for a future he feared might arrive too soon. I pressed the notebook to my chest until it warmed against my skin. A soft crackling noise from the hallway broke the moment. I turned. A floorboard creaked, but not with fear, with memory. Because that floorboard had always creaked like that when Dad stepped on it, pretending to be a ghost to make Mom laugh. Every room had a story, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to hear them. I wandered through the house slowly, touching picture frames, brushing my fingers along Dad's favorite chair, pausing by the kitchen doorway where Mom once said, "The heart of a home is in its flavors." I picked up my guitar from my room, sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, and strummed softly. The sound vibrated through the empty house like a quiet heartbeat returning after being silent for too long. A melody I'd been writing since the funeral drifted back to me, familiar, shaky, unfinished. But I kept playing until the notes steadied and the house seemed to breathe with me. When midnight crept through the windows, I finally walked back upstairs and crawled into my own bed. The sheets were cool, the blankets stiff from disuse, but somehow it still felt like the safest place in the world. As I closed my eyes, one last thought flickered in my mind. Tomorrow I would open the letter. But tonight, I needed to rest inside the memories first. Morning sunlight spilled through my bedroom window, painting the walls in soft gold. For a moment, I didn't move. I just lay there, breathing in the quiet. Really breathing. Not the shallow, tight breaths I'd become used to since Dad died. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt awake, alive in a way I hadn't felt since before Linda wormed her way into every corner of it. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. Today was the day. I knew it before I even opened my eyes. The letter was waiting. Dad's handwriting, Dad's words, Dad's unfinished conversation with me. I padded barefoot to the closet and pulled out his denim jacket. The envelope shifted inside the pocket, soft and deliberate, like it had been waiting for me to finally grow steady enough to open it. I sat cross-legged on my bed, the jacket draped across my lap. For a long time, I just stared at the envelope. Celestine. Just my name. No date, no instructions, no warning. My heartbeat thudded quietly as I slipped a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single handwritten letter and a small metal key. My throat tightened as I pulled the paper out. Dad's handwriting, messy, looping, so familiar it made my eyes burn, covered the page. I read, "My Celestine, if you're holding this, it means life unfolded faster than I hoped. I'm sorry you're reading this instead of hearing it from me directly. Some things I thought I'd have time to explain. I didn't." My breath shook. "I love you more than anything. Your mother loved you fiercely too, and I needed to be sure you were protected, no matter what happened to me." A tear slipped down my cheek. "This house is yours. Not because I didn't love Linda in my own way, but because I trusted you, your heart, your judgment, your strength. I saw something in Linda that worried me. I didn't know how to talk about it without hurting you or causing chaos, so I made plans, quietly. Your aunt knows what to do, and she will protect you. Let her help." He'd known everything. "The key in this envelope belongs to a safety deposit box. Inside is something I want you to have when you're ready. Financial information, documents, and one more thing your mother wanted you to see someday. Don't rush. Take your time. Healing isn't a race." By now, I was crying silently, my tears falling one by one onto the edge of the letter. "And Cece, please remember that you don't have to be strong every day. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to live your life in your own time. I am so proud of you, always, Dad." When I finished the letter, I folded it gently, carefully, like I was holding something sacred, because I was. I pressed it to my chest and inhaled, letting the last pieces of him settle inside me, not as wounds, as something else, as roots. 3 months later, the porch steps still creaked under my feet, but I liked it that way. Dad and I had always talked about fixing them. Now it felt like they were my little reminder that a home doesn't have to be perfect to be loved. I sat down with a mug of coffee. Dad's favorite Denver Broncos mug, the ceramic handle chipped but still sturdy. Steam rose into the cool morning air, curling like soft ribbons. The street was quiet. Birds chirped from the maple tree. Somewhere down the block, the Patterson kids were already arguing about whose turn it was to walk the dog. The world was ordinary again, and ordinary felt like a blessing. I didn't take that gap year after all. Turns out inheriting a house at 19 means diving headfirst into adulthood. Property taxes, utilities, plumbing issues, and a water heater that made a dramatic wheeze every time it turned on. I enrolled in Colorado State University for spring semester, majoring in business administration, something Dad always said I'd be good at. Turns out he was right. I liked the structure, the logic, the feeling of slowly building a future brick by brick, like I was rebuilding myself along the way. I worked part-time at a coffee shop downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the bills paid and gave me something steady to hold on to. Every Sunday, Aunt Rebecca came by for what we now called recipe adventures, which was really just the two of us making Mom's dishes with varying degrees of chaos. Last week, we tried Mom's green chili mac and cheese. We ended up ordering pizza, but we laughed until our stomachs hurt, and for the first time in years, the house rang with a kind of joy I thought I'd lost. Linda moved to Phoenix. That was the rumor anyway. Mrs. Patterson heard it through her sister, who heard it from a friend, who heard it from someone who somehow still kept tabs on Linda. Apparently, Linda tried to contest the trust and was told she didn't have a case. She'd stormed out of the lawyer's office crying. I didn't know how to feel. Anger? Pity? Relief? Mostly pity. She'd had a chance to be part of a real family, but she spent so much time trying to compete with me, she missed every opportunity to simply care. People do strange things when they feel someone else's love is a threat to them. On Friday nights, Sarah still came over for movie marathons. Sometimes we talked about Dad, and sometimes we didn't. Grief didn't follow a pattern. It just came and went like waves. But the good days were starting to outnumber the bad. And Noah, he was gentle through all of it. He didn't rush me, didn't expect me to be okay when I wasn't. Sometimes he'd just sit with me on the porch while I tried to tune my guitar or stared at the sunset, letting the silence fill us without pressure. He asked me once if I wanted to talk about the safety deposit box. Not yet. One day I would. But right now, knowing it was there, knowing there was still one last gift my father had left for me, was enough. This morning, before I stepped outside, I finally did something I'd been avoiding. I opened Dad's closet and reached for the denim jacket. I slipped it on. It smelled like him, felt like him, fit me perfectly. I walked to the grocery store in it. People probably thought nothing of it. Just a girl in a worn denim jacket on a crisp Colorado morning. But it mattered to me. It felt like wearing love. Now, sitting on the porch as sunlight warmed my face, I let myself breathe, really breathe, for the first time in months. This house wasn't just something I inherited. It was a place built from memories, from love, from the pieces of two parents who gave me everything they could while they were here. It was home, my home. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I knew exactly where I was supposed to be.